past, present, and future of CGI.pm, all in a 5-minute lightning talk. And if you're wondering how I'm going to explain 20 years of history in a 5-minute lightning talk, the answer is I'm going to cheat and say I'm not interested in the past. I am interested in the past, but the fact is you probably all know the past of CGI.pm better than I do anyway, so let's skip that. But the recent past is probably more interesting anyway. So last year, Ricardo said we should eject CGI from the core. And then that got to the usual blogs, the usual suspects, and the general consensus was, yes, let's kick it out. And that's what happened. So a few months ago, the very first commit to 5.21, apart from all the housekeeping stuff, was removing CGI. So as of next year, Perl will no longer ship with CGI. About the same time, Professor Linkstein said, I need a new maintainer. He's very busy with other stuff. And I agreed to do that because I'm working with CGI at my current job. So it gives me a better insight into the way we can migrate away from it. So that's me. So the present. CGI is still in a lot of places. I don't know what the half-life of software projects is, but I suspect it's a lot longer than we think it is. And CGI was very popular, which means it's still kind of down there in the curve somewhere. And you can search various things and places, and you'll still see lots of people asking about it, and you still see lots of history on the web. And jobs, even today, there was a job asking for profound knowledge of CGI, including an expert on CGI.pm. So it's there. So what I've been doing is looking at current issues. I'm keeping version 4 back compatible as much as I can do. The RT issue queue had stagnated quite badly. There was over 80 issues when I took over. It's down to less than 10 now, partly because about a third of them have already been fixed. A third of them were kind of low-hanging fruit stuff, and a third of them I rejected, and I'll explain why later. And I've also added CGI alternatives to kind of point people away from CGI. It's kind of like Task Kensho, but for users of CGI. So, and I've been increasing test coverage as well, which is always good. The problem is we know people still advocate the use of CGI. So if you go onto LinkedIn, just about every week, somebody says, I want to use CGI, and then people jump in and say, here's a link to a tutorial from 20 years ago, which isn't helpful. And there's so much history on the web. And there was a recent talk advocating the use of CGI.pm at the Mojalicious conference, which I'm not sure if it was serious or just brilliant trolling, but anyway, so please stop. And that's a link. That's a link to Sawyer's talk from 2 years ago. CGI must die, which is quite entertaining. So the future, version 5 beyond. There's a lot of refactoring that can happen, and has actually already happened. There were so many bugs against the temporary file stuff, race conditions, Windows, etc. So I've already replaced its internal stuff with file temp. And ideas, we can replace URI, and multipart, we can use MIME, and there's lots of stuff there that's quite useful. Go away. And then I want to remove epsidic, because I think that's happening in Perl as well. So CGI lib, because it was only half compatible anyway, and who's still using Perl 4? Well, maybe some people are, but anyway. Deprecating mod Perl 1 compatibility. Originally I was saying mod Perl 1 and 2, but I got a few kind of big gasps when I said that at the Swiss Perl workshop, so maybe just mod Perl 1. And this is a big one, getting rid of all that HTML generation stuff, because it's horrible. And it's 50% of CGI, and it's just a complete obfuscation of anything you're doing with HTML. So that's going to go. But it's going to be soft, so people can still use it if they want to use it. But I really will be noisy if they do use it. So yeah, that's it. Thank you.
So. Ja, dann benutze ich mal meine Zeit auch gleich für ein paar Ankündigungen. Ja, bei Vienna PM steht demnächst die jährliche Generalversammlung an, und die Core-Leute sollten schon eine E-Mail von Roland Lammel erhalten haben, wo es darum geht, einen Termin zu finden. Ich bitte mal um Handzeichen für die Leute aus Wien und Umgebung. Ja, oh, ein ganzer Haufen. Ihr seid dann natürlich auch herzlich eingeladen, vorbeizuschauen und bei der Gelegenheit auch Mitglied zu werden, weil das ist uns wichtig. Yeah. And my second announcement is I'm available later after the lightning talks as an expert for encoding and Unicode issues in Perl 5 and HTTP. So let's chat. Yeah. And organizers, I'm still getting a T-shirt. Yeah. Okay. So my thoughts on a new kind of web server for the next decade. I'm taking a hard look at existing web servers, and you won't believe the amount of functionality which is, I think, missing there. So pay attention to this stuff. I want to get you thinking and see how the situation can be improved, especially with out-of-the-box experience. My personal wish list, and I'm just calling it the foo server for short. My wish list for a good web server. So what should it do? All the modern protocols out of the box. Lots of pluggable protocols, security. Any library, not one hard-coded. Create some intermediate thing for this, perhaps. CA model is tyranny. I don't like it. That should be something else, and also give the choice to the user which kind of PKA or trust model he wants to use. It should be much easier to build web applications. All the building blocks for stuff should be part of the web server, not part of a development stack. Okay, what do we need for plumbing? We need caches. User management, yeah, login stuff, authentication, authorization, caching, edge caching, database access, providing scratch directories or temporary style for storage. All kind of storage which you want to use, file system perhaps with POSIX, content addressable storage, like company store, flat stores, permission models, user groups, something like that, feeds, Atom publishing, or even that weird Oasis standard CMIS for accessing content management resources. Reoccurring checks, which are always part of application code, but could be as well performed by the web server itself, requiring a body for some requests, requiring that the JSON is well formed. The web server should be able to handle that. Checking parameters, question mark, ID equals, and then comes a database, primary key can be checked by the server, media types, whether the entity is a valid one, the message body, or specific checks, applying even JSON patch because, everyone uses JSON, preconditions, all the stuff does not belong in the application. We can reuse web standards, stuff like that for authentication here, preferences, prefer header. So in all this way, applications can become much smaller, much simpler, because all the plumbing is pushed down into the server, and the applications are more porcelain than plumbing. Many more features. When you compile the foo server with the defaults, it should have at least all the functionality of HTTPD and the varnish web cache. Especially stuff like that you can get with Apache HTTPD, but it needs to be enabled especially, and that should be available out of the box. You should be able to use a document editor like Amaya screenshot, yeah, like that. You should be able to enter a URI here and then directly edit the thing, and then when you press save, it gets pushed up with a put request to replace the original document. All the stuff, all the tiny movable bits in the server should be available with a programmable interface, and the API should not be a particular programming language, but instead let's use HTTP itself, like topical, so you can use any programming language to time over? Or what? 5 minutes. Is it over now? Okay. Bye.
So, time starts. Yes, the Rakudo toolchain is interesting, even if Perl 6 isn't your cup of tea. And that was kind of because the title had got too long. Let's see how all this works. You've gone full screen. Perl 5. Ah, it's all rather small. Well, the parser for Perl 5 is written in C. What? Control plus. Oh. The parser for Perl 6 is written in Perl 6.
Control plus.
Yeah, brilliant. Oh, so
This key. Yeah.
that key, right. This is not going to work. I should read it out.
Multiple HTML files.
Yes, I am sorry about that. This didn't work the way I expected. The Perl's grammar cannot be reduced to BNF. The work of parsing Perl is distributed between yak, the Lexa, smoke, and mirrors. This classic quote from Chaim Frenkel. Or as the top of Toke.c says, the Lord of the Rings quote, "It all comes from here, the stench and the peril." Perl 6, yes, so I was trying to remember the next slide. Is the parsers written in Perl 6? Yeah, great. Well, what does this mean? Well, think compilers, GCC and so on. The C compiler is written in C. Pedants will note that both GCC and Clang have moved to C++ recently, but it's written in the same language it runs in. This is self-hosting. Everyone is doing it. Oh, C compilers, as I said, they've been doing it for 25 years. Python, well, PyPy is a self-hosted one. Ruby now has one with Rubinius. So one of the things about this is it's easier to contribute. For example, Timo Paulson's first contribution, my glamorous assistant, was this. Well, that's the merge from Jonathan. Use Levenstein to suggest variables, routines, or superclasses. Like, did you mean? Massive thing. And it was easy for a newcomer to do that because the compiler was written in the language that he already knew. So, contributors matter. So, oh God, was it? Rakudo, the speed. Yes, the speed of the Rakudo build. This admittedly is a 24-core server with quite a lot of RAM. Approximately 3.75 minutes to build everything from clean. Yes, C caching is involved, a bit of cheating. But that's the full spec taste. Rubinius, the self-hosted Ruby one. Well, it did not finish. I tried to build this on my work desktop and I got C++ errors. When I tried it previously, the answer was about 10 minutes. PyPy I haven't tried recently. Yes, about 40 minutes and more than 4 gigs of RAM. I cannot build it on that duct tape, gaffer tape laptop. It will the swap. This is a problem. PyPy is going to have a big problem getting new contributors because it just takes too long. So the first thing about Rakudo's toolchain that's interesting is its speed. The second thing is it's not Tim Tomey.
All the Rakudo people are going, what?
Yeah. There is one toolchain that targets the JVM parrot. There's a JavaScript, native, more VM. There is a JavaScript thing that will get merged soon. It would be relatively easy to add .NET. Contrast this with Ruby, where you've got MRI written in C, Rubinius, JRuby on 193, Ruby.NET. Oh God, what's the next one? Yes, Python. Well, you've got C Python, PyPy doing 3.2, IronPython on 2.7.4, Jython on 2.5.3, and a 2.5.7 beta for 2 months ago, and an RC for 20 months ago. What happened there? They've split their volunteers far too thin. There's one Perl 6 and it's all the same way. So you write one code base on the Perl 6 toolchain, it can target all these VMs. Nah, not yet. And the first one is, and I shall just try and see, the Perl is crazy because it both has begin blocks. You can do arbitrary things at compile time and pre-compiling to disk. I believe nobody else does this. And this is the, just read this Jonathan quote. It demands a mechanism along the lines of, ooh, I see you just changed this object graph that was serialized by this module. So I need to reserialize and build a fix-up table so that I can modify the original with your changes. Oh, and I need to notice if 2 modules you pull in both did augments, and then complain.
Or merge the changes.
Or merge the changes, sorry. And yes, we do all those already, and it was a real nuisance. So yeah, that's why the Rakudo toolchain is really quite interesting. I believe that's the end. Thank you.
So, hi, I'm Timo, or Timo on the IRC. And actually, I wanted to present something completely different today, but I didn't get around to doing the project. And while procrastinating, I made something much better. So, can I get the screen? So, I'm into games. So, I made a game. It's a little shooter. No, that's the wrong one. I just had to make sure that the other one works because I'm going to, one sec. Yeah. Why is this keyboard?
You switched it.
Yeah. Oh my god, this is going terrible. Okay, so this is a little shooter game. And as you can see, the frame rate is like, it's terrible because Perl 6 is so slow. Oh, by the way, this is Perl 6, of course. Perl 6 is so slow, so that the frame rate is totally unacceptable, and there's just not enough enemies on screen to actually make it exciting. So I'm really looking forward to Perl 6 getting faster. Now I died, and yep, there's the slowness. So that's my tiny game. It's just a GTK window, and then I'm putting stuff onto the window with a Cairo drawing area, and it's like the binding was like trivial. It's only just, hey, this sub GTK draw area new comes from libgtk. This method calls this sub, done. And the code is 404 lines. This is the game's code. You can't read it. I'll put it up on GitHub. This is naive code. Like I didn't think about performance at all when I did this, except the star field, which is 4 layers, which are parallax scrolling. I'm generating upfront and then just pasting them onto it. But as you can see, I'm doing some sine and cosine stuff, and every enemy ship is actually rendered on the spot so that I can have different colors. And in theory, they could like have different wing sizes or cockpit sizes. And as you can see, there's chain reactions. One fun thing to change is the probability for chain reactions to like 75, and then up the enemy spawn ratio, which then looks somewhat more like this. Oops, I died. I'm sorry. I can try that again. Let me retry it. Woo! I love space. Space is so exciting. Does the NASA do this for you? No, only the Rakudo developers. Okay, I think I'm finished with this one.
Okay, hello. So I think you're all getting very excited about it. You'll want to build games, you want to use the tool chain, and you want explosions, and I want explosions too. So the first part will be to actually learn Perl 6, because I think that's an important part. And for a long time, there have been only very few and scarce resources, and this has been big problems, because when you were trying to get into the community and learn the language, you basically had to read the design documents. And if you need to read the design documents to learn the language, you probably won't bother. Fortunately, we now have a few tutorials and stuff like that you can read, which will help you to learn the language, I hope. And here's my list of curated resources. So the first one is a little bit of a self-plug, because I actually wrote that one. It's a Learn X in Y minutes, which is a website containing tutorials for very, very different languages. I think we have around 30 or 40 by now, which will explain to you the basics and the not so basics. To give you an idea, every other tutorial is around 400 lines, and ours is almost 2,000 lines. So you have a lot to learn, but I hope it will be fun. We also have the Perl 6 Advent Calendar. Okay, I'm going to actually try to open it, if it works. Yes, okay, it works.
Show the stats.
On
On the top left, just click it.
Okay. Dashboard, right?
No, the
Which
lines, the squiggly lines next to follow.
Okay, I'm blind. So there have been a few visits, as you can see. In 1 week, that's right. We had 11,000 views in 1 week. That's the best week.
That's the best day ever, I
Best
think.
day, okay.
Just click weeks at the top.
Okay, yeah.
Then you can also see the Decembers.
And so, since it's the Advent calendar, you can guess it's in December.
Oh,
Maybe I'll
okay,
get by month.
yeah.
And usually it's a little bit of a peak in frequentation. because everybody gets excited and wraps the presents, but don't really come to it again. And yeah, it's one of the best resources we have, so definitely go for it. How can I? Yes, it works. So that one, we have a little tutorial that's a little bit back from 2008, but it's still getting updated from time to time. And if you already speak POL 5, which most of you do, I guess, it's actually more of a comparison between what you'll do in POL 5 and how that looks in POL 6. So you must feel a little bit more at home because you'll find a mapping of the construct you're used to. You have Rosetta Code, which is a website based on Rosetta Stone IDEA, free languages, except here you have many more languages, and you have a lot of tasks implemented in different languages, and one of them is POL 6, and we actually have quite a lot of them. I think we're something of the 5 language with the most tasks, or something like that. So if you're looking to do something in POL 6 or to look at idiomatic code and stuff like that, you can just click on one of those and see the code, which is really nice to learn. Learning by example is something you can do as well. If I can find a POL 6 version.
Scroll with 2 fingers.
Yes. Okay. So that's an example, and you can actually compare them to other languages. And C POL 6 is definitely the best of those. And of course, if you want to, or if you need to, delve deeper, you can still look at the synopsis. You don't need to read every single one of them. If you want to look at the subset that will give you the most for the least amount of reading, it's probably better to read as the synopsis 2, which describes the basic syntax, the blocks, stuff like that. S03, the operators, so it's probably one of the biggest. S05 rejects this because they don't look really much like what POL 5 has. And for the best, because it's actually sane, which is good. And S6, which is the subroutines, methods, multi-dispatch, and everything like that. So that's all I have, but it should be a pretty comprehensive road to learning it, and I hope some of you will be here tomorrow for POL 5 Hackathon.
This time I've actually got a headset so that I can type while I'm talking, because the topic of this one is live coding Cairo. Can I get the picture? Thanks. Okay, so as you can probably think, any shoot 'em up will need like a boss fight or something, and developing something like a boss is kind of time consuming if you have to spend 5 minutes before you see the boss actually. So I've made this nice little tool where on the one side you have tiny code, unfortunately, and on the other side you can see what it does. So in here we define a little in this case I call it frame, and we get a time and a time delta since the last time. And now we can, like here I'm scaling it up 4 times so that you can see it on the projector. Black rectangle, like 150 by 150 pixels, and I fill that. Then orange color, move to some position with a sine, and then draw a line to some position with a cosine. And now I can do stuff like for 6 times, do a little for loop. And if I wait for 1 second, it will re-evaluate. In this case, I didn't change actually anything, so it draws the lines on the very same position. But if I do something like this, I already have something pretty cute. So I'm already getting pretty close to like an amazing boss object kind of thing. So now I can like add a rectangle, I should factor out the positions. My x, y equals, now I'll copy this. Whoop. And I'll copy this. Unfortunately, this simple text view of GTK doesn't have undo or indenting or folding or something. But I think, actually I wanted to add GTK source view, it's called, which is the same thing you get in GTK IDEs. Unfortunately, I spend too much time with the game instead. So, okay, this doesn't belong there. Okay, now it finished, and I can actually, like, let me store the coordinates of the endpoints in an array. So my at positions equals do for up to 6, and at the very end I say $x, $y, because the last thing in the for block will get stored. And then I can for at position into A, B, C, D, which means I'm always taking 4. In this case, it's 1x, 1y, 1x, 1y. So I can do something like Cairo dot move to A, B, Cairo dot line to C, D, and Cairo stroke. Okay, that's not quite correct because I forgot that I have there's translate somewhere. Oh yes, here I'm adding 50 here. Which is this one and this one. Okay, that's kind of cute. So since I don't have enough time for real life coding, and when I close it, it saves it into a file and gives me the file name on the console. Since I don't really have time for something proper, I made this fun rotating thingy.p6, which looks like this. And I think this would make a pretty nice little abstract boss fight thingy. So come to the hackathon, ask me for the code, I'll put it on GitHub, link it on the wiki, and you can try your hand at doing some Cairo stuff. Thanks.
Hello, I'm gonna, again, yet another Perl 6 talk. I'm gonna talk a little about porting tab harness to Perl 6. Now, first of all, why? I happen to be maintaining tab harness on Perl 5, and you know how that can happen. Maintainer is busy, and then you're like, sure, here's a commit bit, go, you can go fix it. But I kind of dislike it. For two reasons. The first of it has a bit of a second system syndrome. It was written as a replacement for the original test harness, which was the simplest thing they could do, and it's lots of factories and other design patterns, and the second one of it, the multiplexing support is kind of bolted through. They tried to make a synchronous program asynchronous fairly late in the process, and this works most of the time, except that it occasionally hangs for more input. And well, this kind of annoyed me, but well, this is one of those cases where you're like, this is not perfect, but it doesn't really make sense to re-implement everything from scratch in this context, because too much work, not enough profit. Oh, right. But then recently, it's in Sofia, and I'm gonna blame, where's Jonathan? Yes, I'm gonna blame you. Oh, this is all your fault. Because in Sofia, he had a presentation where he talked about async stuff, and then I was like, gee, that would make my life there a lot easier. And then I discovered that, hey, Perl 6 doesn't have a tab harness yet, so now it's using Perl's 5 tab harness to test Perl 6 modules, which is obviously non-ideal. So I was like, gee, I'm gonna try this. So yeah, what does tab look like? Tab is essentially a document that has a plan which starts with one ... number, and then that number of OK lines. That's pretty much everything that's required. This is actually valid tab. It has the interesting rule that any non-recognized line is considered a comment and is ignored. I'm sure this would work great in a programming language. So yeah, parsing it. To parse it, I'm using a grammar, and here I'm showing you a small piece of the grammar. It's interesting to note, like, a document is a number of lines. A line is any of these tokens, and here you see a single bar between those tokens. Damn it, it falls off. Basically, it has a longest token match for all alternations, and then a standard Perl 5-ish words. This works better if you can actually see my code, if that thing had HDMI and would now be high resolution. Yes. Observe it. That. I'm using different semantics here because what it basically does is try any of these first. If any of these match, use the one that's longest token matching. If it doesn't, use unknown. And as you can see, the unknown is simply specified as anything that's not a new line. Okay, next step. Now what do I do with that after it? For that I use actions. This basically means all those rules in the grammar have an associated action, which means here, for example, for the plan action, it collects a number of arguments. If this argument is present, then add those to the hash, and then create a new plan event based on the parsed data. Well, plan is moderately complicated. Comment is a bit more representative, and unknown is just there is no sensible thing to say other than the raw data because it's unknown. So how do I patch this up with everything? Well, basically what I'm doing, I'm getting my data in. I'm just appending it to a buffer. I'm matching it, removing everything that's matched from the string, and then sending all the events on to the next step, and then I'm out of time. And I should have made this a proper talk.
Right, we're almost done. I've only got 88 slides, so we'll get through those quickly. Okay, I think most of us, or many of us, would identify as developers. So I was wondering, what's the collective noun for developers? Flock. Yeah. So someone cleverer and wittier than I, a merge conflict. But I want to talk about a celebration of developers today. So back in the early 70s, some of you, not me of course, may remember Helen Reddy had a big hit with a song about developers. She wrote and recorded a song about developers. The first line was, "I am developer, hear me roar." And this is the chorus. It's very profound. "Oh yes, I am wise, but it's wisdom born of pain. Yes, I've paid the price, but look how much I've gained. If I have to, I can do anything. I am strong, I am invincible, I am developer." Now, a few years later, another commentator was no less eloquent. Some of you know already.
Developers, 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 developers. Developers, 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 developers. Yes.
You know, every time I watch that, there's something new that amazes me. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So what is it about developers then that these people enjoy so much? Let's take a look at some of the characteristics of developers. I'm not a sysadmin, but I can install an OS on a bare machine. I can hack a mail config. I can patch bash. I'm not a DBA, but I can write a schema in third normal form. I can run explain on a query and add the missing index. I'm not a system architect, but I can design a class and an API. Oops, sorry, am I standing right now? Okay. I'm not a web designer, but I can write HTML by hand. I can get CSS to do what I want. I'm not a QA engineer, but I can design for test. I can write unit tests. I can automate a browser, and I know your code is buggy. I'm not a business analyst, but I can learn enough about a domain to solve problems. I'm not a computer scientist, but I know that O(n) log n is probably okay, and O(n) squared probably isn't. I know you should use a heap if you can, and I know there's a Wikipedia article on red-black trees that I can look up when I need to. I'm not a hardware engineer, but I know that you need more RAM. I can add more RAM. I can replace a disk, and I know it shouldn't be making that noise. I'm not a systems programmer, but I know how to use both the Perl select calls. I'm not an internationalization specialist, but I know to just use UTF-8. Nothing funny about that. I'm not a support staffer, but have you tried turning it off and on again? I can get you into your machine when you've forgotten your password. I know your PC is slow because it's full of malware. I'm not a performance tester, but I know that your guesses about which bits are slow are useless until it's been profiled. We all heard Tim. I'm not a network engineer, but I can configure a router. I know there's 7 layers on that OSI diagram. I know that soldering up an RS-232 cable was quite fun. I don't know. Some of you may remember that. If that doesn't work, 2 to 2 and 3 to 3. Otherwise, you need handshaking. I'm not a scrum master, but I know that you can't sprint the whole time. I'm not a security expert, but I know that cross anything is bad, and so are injections. I know SQL needs to be parameterized. I can configure SSL certificates. I can set up SSH tunnels. I'm not a miracle worker. Oh, hold on. Yes, I am. No. Okay, we're almost done. Back to Helen Reddy. Oh yes, I am wise, but it's wisdom born of pain. Yes, I've paid the price, but look how much I've gained. If I have to, I can do anything. I am strong, I am invincible, I am developer. Thank you very much.